It could have gone the other way. I think had we had a different outcome in the election, we might be looking at $50,000, not $100,000. So I think, we have the best of all possible worlds for Bitcoin right here. And this is like we just added kerosene to the fire, and the fire is going in one direction right now. Bitcoin right now is a $1.5 trillion asset class. But of that $1.5 trillion, TradFi only owns about $100 billion worth, which is kind of the value of all the ETFs, which is about 1 million coins, and MicroStrategy, right? So in a world where they have $100 billion of it, but their total pie is $100 trillion, their actual asset allocation is 0.1%. And we're going, oh my God, how much is the entire dam is about to break. So, you're in, the looking at the chart of Bitcoin in the past, I don't think informs you very well as to where it's about to go. We are about to have a breaking dam moment where TradFi has finally awoken to this asset, and number one, understands the opportunity, and number two, can now for the last 9 months invest in this asset.
Bitcoin is about to go mainstream in a way we've never seen before. With traditional finance poised to pour trillions into Bitcoin, this explosive shift could be just the beginning. But what happens when the dam breaks? Fred Krueger explains why Bitcoin's all-time highs could trigger a flood of institutional investment like never before.
I mean, the election changes everything, right? So it could have gone the other way. I think had we had a different outcome in the election, we might be looking at $50,000, not $100,000. So I think, we have the best of all possible worlds for Bitcoin right here. And this is like we just added kerosene to the fire, and the fire is going in one direction right now, which is up. There's about $47 trillion worth of stocks out there, an equivalent amount of bonds, and 5 or 6 trillion of cash out there. And just in the US alone, there's $100 trillion of financial assets. Bitcoin right now is a $1.5 trillion asset class. But of that $1.5 trillion, TradFi only owns about $100 billion worth, which is kind of the value of all the ETFs, which is about 1 million coins, and MicroStrategy. Right. So in a world where they have $100 billion of it, but their total pie is $100 trillion, their actual asset allocation is 0.1%. And actually, it's less than that because Bitcoin's a global asset, and the US doesn't have more than 1/3 of the total global pie. So we're looking at something like 0.3% of allocation to this asset class. And we're going to north of 1% very quickly.
Yeah.
We're looking at $1 trillion coming into this asset over the next, let's call it 4 years. But if this money's coming in, you don't really want to be the last guy in the pool. All the amount of money that's come into this market is inconsequential relative to the amount of money that's about to come into this market. It just doesn't matter. So, again, there's these big buckets of money in the world, right? So there's self-directed people going to their stock, their portfolio, their account at Merrill Lynch and clicking a few buttons and picking up some exposure to MSTR or one of the new ETF. That's 1/3. You have institutions like pension funds, retirement accounts, and things like that. That's another 1/3. And then you have managed accounts where wealth managers are allocating on behalf of their clients. That's 1/3. And none of these things they're just like dipping the very top bit of their toe in the water. That's 0.1%. They are not involved yet. So, it's sort of like the dam there's a little bit of water, there's a little fissure in the dam, and we're seeing some water drip through the dam, and we're going, oh my God, how much is the entire dam is about to break. So, you're in, looking at the chart of Bitcoin in the past, I don't think informs you very well as to where it's about to go. We are about to have a breaking dam moment where TradFi has finally awoken to this asset, and number one, understands the opportunity, and number two, can now for the last 9 months invest in this asset. That the ETF is live. They can push a button, they can get exposure. So I think, we have the catalyst for this move, which is the ETF. That's the necessary and sufficient condition. Before that, traditional investors couldn't buy Bitcoin easily. Sure, they could open an account at Coinbase, but that's a very small percentage of people who are going to do that. Most people, they have their assets in a brokerage account or in a bank. And, for them to wire money to this thing called Coinbase, buy Bitcoin it's a stretch. And it's even more of a stretch to tell them you got to put get a seed phrase, copy it down, store it in a safe, get a ledger, and hold your own Bitcoin yourself. That's not going to happen for most people.
No, it's a very good point.
They're not going to do that.
The Bitcoin market is on the edge of a major transformation, with institutional investors increasing their allocation from 1% to 10% over the next few years. This could inject a staggering $1 trillion into the market, skyrocketing Bitcoin prices. The introduction of Bitcoin ETFs, particularly by giants like BlackRock, is making it easier for traditional financial institutions to invest, which Fred Krueger believes could trigger a tsunami of money flowing into Bitcoin. But that's not all. The concept of a U.S. Bitcoin strategic reserve could be a game changer, signaling widespread adoption by both institutions and individual investors. Krueger recommends holding 90% of your portfolio in Bitcoin over the next 4 years, with the remaining 10% dedicated to more speculative assets like meme coins. Bitcoin's price could surge to $100,000, setting the stage for an explosive financial shift.
We're moving very, very quickly in a direction where we have a strategic Bitcoin reserve, where the largest entity in the world, which is the US government, is buying Bitcoin. And so if you're not buying Bitcoin and your government is buying Bitcoin and you're sort of still on the Peter Schiff train that this is not real money, you got to go see a doctor, because obviously it's real if the U.S. government's buying it. So it doesn't matter how much the U.S. government buys. The fact that we have a strategic reserve is all you need to know. That is all you need to know. And that means that if you're a company, your company needs to buy Bitcoin. If you're a country, your country needs to buy Bitcoin. If you're an individual, you need to start front running that as fast as you can, right? Here's the first problem is, if you think about trading Bitcoin, you're in the wrong. You've already said the wrong thing. You should not trade Bitcoin, period, full stop, ever, okay? So the fact that you're asking about trading Bitcoin is wrong. This is probably going to be, it will be the best asset, the best performing asset of your entire life. And, if you're trying to pick where it's going in the next 3 months, I have no idea. But this thing is going to go so much higher that the only thing you need to do is, how can I possibly stomach the inevitable volatility that's going to happen, and how much of a position can I take? Now, I would sort of say, if your number is 10% of your portfolio or less, you're probably thinking the wrong number. You're probably in the wrong zip code, okay? If you're saying 1% to 2%, great. You've just seen the best asset of all time, and with the best catalyst for growth of all time, and you're coming up with 2%. What's happening with the other 90%? I'm not saying they're all terrible. What I'm saying is, the biggest opportunity right now and the biggest opportunity in your portfolio is Bitcoin. It's how much Bitcoin do you own? Now, I think the problem with all these other coins is you can get very distracted very quickly, right? You can say, well, what about Solana? Well, then what about, Avalanche? And what about Near? And what about Sui and Aptos? And, and you can spend the next month just getting lost in trying to understand all these different protocols, and if they're cheap or if they're rich, or you can spend all this time on that, right? But I think that it's a distraction. What you really need to do is figure out the main question, which is, what percent of your portfolio is in Bitcoin? That's the number one thing right now. If you already hold these coins, I would actually sell them and buy Bitcoin. Personally, I would just simplify your life. If you're asking me for my doctor's advice, I would say, just make sure sure that 90% of your portfolio is pure Bitcoin. And then just look at the other 10% as like you're going to Vegas and you're going to hit various tables. You're going to go to the blackjack table, you're going to go to the craps table, you're going to place a yo bet, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. Think of it as entertainment and not investment advice. And if you want to go play it and just have some funds, and maybe you want to even buy some meme coins or something, I don't know. Anything that will help you not sell that Bitcoin, it doesn't matter. And like, honestly, if you lose it all, it doesn't matter. The 90% that you have in Bitcoin is going to bail you out. And maybe you're going to get lucky. Maybe you're going to hit the next big thing, the thing that's going to outperform Bitcoin. It's possible. Something will outperform Bitcoin. I don't know. This is what cost the Democrats the election. Honestly, what cost the election was Elizabeth Warren with her anti-crypto army. That cost the Democrats the election. And honestly, they're going to do some soul searching, and I don't think they're going to fight this one again. They're going to pick different fights. That one was a very, very bad fight to make, and I think that's over. I think we're going to get to a much more crypto-friendly SEC. I think we're going to get to a crypto-friendly administration, and I do think it's going to be bipartisan at this point. They're going to fight the border. They're going to fight things like that, but I just don't see them fighting a Bitcoin reserve fund.
As Fred Krueger suggests, Bitcoin's future is set to explode, both in terms of price and institutional interest, with traditional finance jumping in and the potential for a U.S. Bitcoin strategic reserve. The market could see a shift unlike anything we've witnessed. The 2024 elections could be the catalyst, pushing Bitcoin to new heights. If you're holding off on Bitcoin, now might be the time to reconsider your strategy. Don't miss out on the next big wave. Stay tuned for more insights on how Bitcoin is reshaping the financial landscape.